The morning of my brother's rehearsal dinner, I spent 45 full minutes helping my 6-year-old daughter choose between two tiny hair barrettes, white daisies or silver stars, because to her, this decision mattered. She had been practicing her walk for 4 months, turning the hallway of our apartment into an aisle, scuffing the baseboard where she would pivot carefully and start again. She was going to be the flower girl. She had prepared for it with the seriousness only children bring to promises they believe are real. We drove 40 minutes to the lakefront inn, her yellow dress pressed, her daisies clipped neatly into her hair. She kept asking if Uncle Ryan would notice them. She was ready, completely ready. And before we were even allowed to walk through the front door, my mother pulled me aside in the garden and told me they had replaced her. The morning of my brother's rehearsal dinner, I spent 45 minutes in the bathroom with my 6-year-old daughter while she tried to decide between two pairs of barrettes, tiny white daisies or little silver stars. She stood on the step stool in her yellow dress, studying her reflection like this choice carried real weight. To her, it did. She had been practicing her flower girl walk for 4 months, pacing slowly down our hallway, turning carefully at the scuffed baseboard, starting over whenever she felt she'd gone too fast. She wanted to get it right. She chose the daisies. I told her they were perfect, and she believed me the way children do when the world has not yet given them a reason not to. We drove 40 minutes to the lakefront inn, her excitement filling the back seat. She kept asking if Uncle Ryan would notice her barrettes. She was ready, completely ready. Before we were even allowed through the front entrance, my mother pulled me aside into the garden and told me they had replaced her. My mother said it gently, like she was rescheduling a dentist appointment. Madison's niece would be the flower girl instead. The decision had been made weeks ago. They just hadn't told us. Ryan didn't want to deal with it before the wedding. For a second, I couldn't even feel angry. It was something heavier than that. My daughter had practiced for 4 months. 4 months of slow, careful steps down our hallway. 4 months of asking if she was doing it right. 4 months of believing she had a place in her uncle's wedding. And my brother, my own brother, had decided it was easier to let our mother handle me than to make a simple phone call. When I walked back to the parking lot, Emma was crouched beside Derek, proudly counting white rocks in the gravel. He read my face in half a second. I told him. They replaced her. The words tasted strange. I knelt down in front of Emma and told her the job had changed. Her first question wasn't why. It was, did I do it wrong? That's what broke me. No, she hadn't done it wrong. She had done everything right. She had shown up prepared. She had trusted us. Inside the dining room, the new flower girl already held the wicker basket. Emma saw it. She didn't cry. She squeezed my hand and sat through dinner, telling strangers about a frog she once found in our backyard. She managed her disappointment better than most adults in that room. But something shifted in me that night. It wasn't about a basket. It was about being treated like a problem to be managed. It was about my daughter learning, too early, that sometimes people rewrite your role without even warning you. If you've ever been the sibling expected to be understanding, the one who smooths things over so everyone else stays comfortable, you know exactly how quiet that hurt can be. And if this story feels familiar, stay with me, because what happened next changed more than just a wedding.
The truth is, this didn't start in a garden outside a rehearsal dinner. It started years ago, maybe decades. Ryan has always been the one people adjusted around, the sensitive one, the social one, the one who didn't handle conflict well. When we were kids, if something went wrong, I was the one who was told to let it go. If he forgot something, someone reminded him. If he hurt someone's feelings, someone explained what he really meant. There was always a translation layer between him and consequence. I didn't notice it when we were younger. It just felt like family gravity, everyone shifting slightly so he didn't have to. But that night, standing in a room full of candles and wine glasses while my daughter sat quietly beside me, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about a flower basket. It was about a pattern. Ryan didn't call because uncomfortable conversations make him anxious, so he passed it to Mom. Mom didn't call sooner because she didn't want tension before the wedding, so she waited until we were physically there, dressed and ready, with no space to react. And I was expected to absorb it, smile, be gracious, not make it a whole thing. That phrase kept echoing in my head. Make it a whole thing. As if having feelings about your child being publicly replaced was theatrics, as if asking for basic courtesy was drama. I realized something else too. Emma was watching me. She was learning what we do when someone minimizes us. She was learning whether we swallow it or speak. When my father texted me to meet him outside, I didn't know what he was going to say. My father is not dramatic. He doesn't text during family events. He doesn't make scenes. He observes. He absorbs. But even he had seen it. He had seen the message from Ryan asking Mom to handle me. He had sat through appetizers knowing his granddaughter was inside, wearing a dress she had prepared for months, pretending nothing had shifted. And something in him, something that had tolerated this pattern for 30 years, finally cracked. When he told me he had changed the inheritance paperwork, that the Vermont land would go to me instead of being split evenly, I felt a complicated rush of emotion. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't revenge. It was recognition. He wasn't punishing Ryan. He was naming a truth. Ryan avoids. The family compensates. I absorb. That night, my father decided he was done participating in that choreography. And here's what hit me hardest. Emma handled her disappointment with more integrity than the adults who created it. She asked if she had done something wrong. When I told her no, she accepted it. She didn't demand attention. She didn't sulk. She adapted. But children shouldn't have to adapt to adult cowardice. I sat at that table realizing how easy it is for patterns to pass quietly from one generation to the next, not through cruelty, but through convenience, through small decisions that prioritize comfort over honesty, through let's not make this bigger than it is. It's rarely the dramatic betrayals that shape families. It's the repeated minimizations, the time someone chooses ease over accountability, the expectation that one person will always understand. I understood that night that being the easy one had cost me more than I realized. It had trained people to assume I would bend, and if I didn't, I would be labeled difficult. But watching my daughter sit there with her daisies in her hair, I knew something had to shift, not because of the wedding, not because of the inheritance, but because she deserves to see that disappointment is not the same as silence, that love does not require shrinking, that grace does not mean erasing yourself. That realization didn't explode. It settled, quiet and solid. And once you see a pattern clearly, you can't unsee it.
Dinner moved forward the way rehearsal dinners always do. Glasses clinking, forks against china, laughter rising and falling in warm waves. Long tables dressed in cream linen, low arrangements of garden flowers. 30 people leaning into each other's stories as if nothing delicate had just been broken in the parking lot outside. Emma sat between Derek and me, her legs swinging slightly above the floor. She ate her chicken carefully, then reached for Derek's bread roll without asking. He pretended to protest. She grinned. Across the room, the new flower girl, Madison's niece, was already holding the wicker basket, showing it to a cluster of women near the window. Emma noticed. I saw her eyes linger there for half a second too long. She didn't say anything. Instead, she turned to the elderly couple seated on her other side and began telling them in great detail about a frog she once found in our backyard, a green one, very fast, possibly magical. She used her hands when she talked. She leaned forward like this story was urgent and important. The couple laughed at all the right places. She never mentioned the basket. I watched her the entire time, measuring every blink, every pause, waiting for the crack. It didn't come. She managed her disappointment the way children sometimes do, by placing it gently to the side and continuing on. Halfway through the main course, I excused myself and walked to the restroom. I didn't cry. I just stood there with my hands pressed against the cool porcelain sink, water running longer than necessary. I thought about the dress hanging in her closet 4 months ago, about the way she had spun in front of the fitting room mirror when we finally found the right one, about kneeling at the end of our hallway while she practiced walking toward me, slow and serious, her smile barely contained. 4 months of preparation erased with one quiet garden conversation. And my brother had known. That detail kept circling. He had known and chosen not to call, chosen not to risk discomfort, chosen not to give us time to adjust privately. It was easier to let us arrive excited and dressed and then correct us at the door. When I walked back into the dining room, nothing had changed. The candles still flickered. My mother was laughing at something across the table. Ryan stood to give a toast, his arm around Madison, his voice warm and earnest. He spoke about love and partnership and honesty. Emma clapped the loudest. I sat there realizing how strange it is that a room can look so beautiful and still hold something unresolved in the air, how a family can celebrate and fracture at the same time. Emma leaned her head briefly against my arm, then straightened and reached for another piece of bread. Life continuing, small and steady.
I was crossing the lobby after standing too long at the sink when my phone vibrated. I assumed it was Derek checking on me. He knew that look on my face. It was my father. Come find me outside on the east porch. Now, please. My father does not text during family events. He barely texts at all. Once I watched him spend nearly 6 minutes typing the word okay with one finger. So when I saw that message, something in my chest shifted. He was standing at the railing when I stepped onto the porch, lake stretched out behind him, evening settling into gold and shadow. He didn't waste time. Ryan knew, he said, for at least 3 weeks. Not a suspicion. Not a guess. He had seen the message on my mother's phone. Ryan had asked her to handle me because I would make it a whole thing, and he couldn't deal with that on top of everything else. He had called me a thing. I didn't feel explosive. I felt clarified, like a lens snapping into focus. My father rested both hands on the railing and stared out at the water for a long moment before speaking again. I've spent 30 years making things easier for him, he said quietly. Every time something was uncomfortable, someone stepped in. Tonight, I realized we've been teaching him that he doesn't have to stand in hard moments. The music from inside drifted out onto the porch. Laughter, glasses clinking, celebration continuing as if the ground hadn't shifted. Then he told me about the land in Vermont, my grandmother's property, the dock, the summers. He had intended to split it between Ryan and me. I changed the paperwork last week, he said. This isn't about the flower girl. It's about a pattern. The land would go to me. It wasn't victory. It was acknowledgement. He was naming something out loud that had always been quietly arranged. And then he handed me the velvet pouch, my grandmother's bracelet, the one my mother had given to Madison months ago, as a welcome to the family gift, without asking, without mentioning it. My father had asked for it back. He had corrected it. Standing there on that porch, holding the thin gold chain in my palm, I realized this wasn't just about protecting me. It was about my father stepping out of the old choreography, the one where we fix things privately, the one where we prioritize smoothness over truth. I'm going to say something inside, he told me, and I want you next to me. That was the moment everything tilted. Not because of anger, not because of inheritance, but because someone who had always chosen quiet had decided, finally, to be clear. When my father stepped into that dining room and waited, just waited, until the conversations thinned and the air shifted, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. Silence is also a choice, and for years we had all been choosing it. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he simply said the thing that should have been said before we ever walked through the door, that the way Emma and I had been handled was wrong, that a phone call should have been made, that being family means you don't erase someone's role without giving them dignity. And in that moment, I felt something inside me rearrange. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about embarrassing Ryan. It wasn't even about defending Emma in front of strangers. It was about ending the habit of pretending everything is fine so no one feels uncomfortable. For the first time, the weight wasn't mine alone to carry. I looked at Ryan while our father spoke. His jaw was tight, eyes calculating at first, then softer. Not defensive, not entirely,
just confronted. Maybe for the first time without a buffer. And I realized something else. Ryan probably didn't wake up intending to diminish us. He just did what he'd always done when things felt hard. He handed them off. He had never learned to stand in the discomfort because someone always stepped in first. That night, no one stepped in. The pattern was visible, named, exposed to light. And once something is brought into the open, it stops being a quiet undercurrent and becomes a choice. Continue it or change it. Standing beside my father, with Emma's small hand tucked into mine and daisies still clipped neatly in her hair, I understood that this was the real inheritance being passed down. Not land, not jewelry. Boundaries. Clarity. The refusal to be managed.
Ryan found me before dessert. No audience this time, no raised voices, just my younger brother standing in front of me, hands shoved into his pockets like he was bracing himself. "I should have called you," he said. Not defensive, not rushed, just plain. I knew the day it changed. I didn't want to deal with it, and that wasn't fair to you. There it was. No translation layer, no one managing the moment for him. I didn't soften it. "You should have," I said. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not cushion the truth. He nodded. He looked past me at Emma, who was carefully dismantling a dinner roll like it required engineering skills. "She okay?" he asked. "She's 6, I said. She adjusted, but that doesn't mean it didn't matter. He absorbed that, stayed in it, didn't deflect. The next day, at the ceremony, Madison's coordinator brought Emma forward at the start of the processional, not with the basket, with a single white peony tied in ribbon that matched her dress. Madison had chosen it herself. It was a small correction, a deliberate one. Emma held that flower like it was the most important thing in the building. She walked slowly, carefully, exactly the way she had practiced for 4 months. When she reached our row and spotted us, her face opened into the widest, purest smile. No bitterness, no performance, just pride. It wasn't the original plan. It wasn't the full repair, but it was effort. And afterward, Ryan called. Not once, several times. The conversations were longer than they'd been in years. Some parts were awkward, some quiet, but he stayed on the line. Change didn't arrive in a grand gesture. It came in smaller choices. Phone calls made directly, conversations not outsourced, discomfort endured instead of avoided. It wasn't perfect, but it was movement. After the wedding weekend, nothing snapped perfectly into place. Families don't work that way. They adjust. They renegotiate their balance. Ryan and I started talking more. Real conversations, not surface updates. Sometimes they were uncomfortable. Sometimes there were long pauses where neither of us quite knew what to say next. But he didn't hand those moments to someone else anymore. He stayed. That alone felt new. My mother remained convinced she had handled everything appropriately. We stopped trying to fully agree. Instead, we found a quieter version of Sunday dinners. Pleasant, careful, functional. Not healed, but stable. My father began calling every Thursday evening, just after 6. He and Emma now have an ongoing discussion about a cardinal in his backyard she named Gerald. He mails her photocopied pages from bird books. She keeps them on her nightstand like treasure. The bracelet rests on my wrist most mornings, not as a trophy, not as proof, as a reminder of what shifts when someone finally says the true thing out loud. 2 weeks later, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, I fastened my grandmother's bracelet around my wrist while Emma ate cereal at the kitchen table. The light coming through the window was soft and early summer warm, the kind that makes everything feel unhurried. Emma noticed immediately. "Pretty?" she asked, pointing her spoon at my wrist. "It was your great-grandmother's," I told her. She nodded with serious approval, then went back to her cereal as if that information had been carefully filed away somewhere important.
Some days she asks to see inside the locket. I open it and unfold the tiny slip of paper with the verse written in my grandmother's hand. Emma doesn't fully understand the words yet, but she listens like she does. That's what stays with me. Not the basket, not the porch speech, not even the inheritance. What stays is this. My daughter saw that when something hurt, we didn't pretend it didn't. She saw that love can be honest, that respect can be asked for, that being gracious does not mean being silent. It isn't a perfect family, but it's a truer one.